super friends, and welcome to DC TV Talk, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down and reviewing Legends of Tomorrow Season 4 Episode 6, otherwise entitled Tender is the Nate. And before you proceed with this review, make sure you've seen the episode as it will be filled with spoilers. So this episode started out in a rather strange way as we see Ava at the Time Bureau with a special guest knocking at the door being Sara Lance, who is doing this very seductive, sexy dance towards her to celebrate Ava's birthday. And while this scene was interesting, it just came across incredibly strange to me and incredibly weird, and playing so much to... It just came across to me as if it was like, oh, 9 PM time slot, let's go. And I know Legends has been on 9 PM for a while now, but it just kind of came across, it was like, oh, we can do this, so let's do it. Because it was so out of character for Sara. Like, Sara, yeah, she is very seductive, she's very, you know, very forthcoming in terms of relationships and things like that. But she's not like that. Like, she's not, you know, willing to dress up in, like, sexy garments and start trying to seduce you that way. She seduces you, you know, just through dialogue. And I found that very strange, and it came across incredibly out of character for Sara. Although it does lead to a funny scene with Hank, you know, when he walks in on them, it's still, you know, it just came across incredibly strange to me, and I found it a bit uncomfortable, to be honest with you. Now, the main story in this episode is that Hank is not quite sure that this extra funding towards the Legend should really be happening, so Nate invites him onto the Wave Rider to take him on a mission with the Legends in order to show him and prove to him what they can do and why they need the funding. Now, this whole storyline came across as incredibly filler to me, and also this entire storyline doesn't make any sense, because why would the Legends need funding? I understand that now they are under the banner of the Time Bureau, but even before that, they never needed funding. Like, you know, everything they've done, because everything that Hank mentions in this episode that they need funding for, which is, you know, the clothes, the food, everything like that, doesn't Gideon make all of that? Like, Gideon, you know, can literally make anything. And that's what we've established over the past 3 seasons, is that Gideon, she's the one who creates all these clothes that they wear for these specific time periods. She's the one who creates all this food that they eat on the ship. So why do they need funding for that all of a sudden? Rip never mentioned any funding. Rip didn't mention, you know, carrying out any loans, you know. As far as I understand it, the Wave Rider was a pretty self-sufficient thing. So why do they need, you know, funding from the Time Bureau all of a sudden? It just comes across really strange to me. And, you know, like I say, I understand that they're now working for the Time Bureau, but surely if Hank understands that, you know, for the past 3 years these guys have been pretty self-sufficient, then yeah, surely cutting the funding wouldn't actually be that big of an issue, because surely they'll be fine. Now, that all aside, this whole storyline, you know, kind of going to France, dealing with the Minotaur, it's your pretty average kind of Legends stuff. It's, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, what this season has kind of been peddling out over the past, you know, 6 episodes. It's just kind of what you've been getting on with. You know, you go to a specific location, you meet a couple of historic figures, you have a magical creature, in this case it's the Minotaur, and you have, you know, hilarity ensues. Now, the fight, I have to say, with the Minotaur and Sara was actually really cool, and there were a couple of really funny lines here and there, but this part of the story just didn't do it for me. Like, it didn't excite me. I didn't find it particularly fun or entertaining. It was just kind of meh. And then we also had a side story in this episode, which was Nora, Mona, and Ava being locked up in Nora Dark's cell. Now, again, this just came across a bit weird. It was just kind of like we had these 3 characters who weren't really connected, who were just stuck in a room together having to bond. And it was just, you know, that idea can work. Something like that can work, but with these 3 characters, they just had no chemistry whatsoever, and they didn't really feel like they grown that much by the end of it. I have to say, though, I think that Courtney Ford as Nora Dark was awesome. I really liked her in this episode, actually. She came across very Laurel to me, like very Black Siren in the way she's been acting this season on Arrow. She kind of came across and gave that sort of vibe to me, and I'm really loving Black Siren on Arrow this season. So, you know, I'm translating that to Legends, in this case with Nora, I think works really well. I enjoyed her quite a lot. But then Mona, who is a character who's going to be very prevalent this season, she is a series regular, she was very annoying in this episode. I was kind of alright with her the past 2 weeks that we've seen her very briefly, but we got quite a lot of her this week, and I found it to be a bit too much. I don't really find her that entertaining. She reminds me very much of Nora West Allen on The Flash, actually, but Nora isn't as annoying as this. I don't find Nora on The Flash annoying, but I did find Mona incredibly annoying. Hopefully they'll give her time to grow as this season goes on, as it progresses, but as it stands right now, I just didn't enjoy her performance, and I did find her to be quite childish, immature, and again, case in point, annoying. Now, as you can see, I've been very negative with this review so far, and I've not been too kind to Legends this season, and it really hurts me to do that, because if you were watching this channel last year, when Legends Season 3 was doing the rounds, you know how much I loved that season. I adored Season 3 of Legends of Tomorrow. I think it's one of the best seasons in the Arrowverse. I think it's so fantastic, it's so funny, it's so well written, it's so well established, and these characters just go on this journey that is so fun to watch, but is also hilarious and very true to these characters and where they come from. The problem with Legends this season is I feel like the team roster has changed so much to this point where it just doesn't feel the same anymore. Like, I was thinking about this, could you really see Jax and Stein? Like, could you really see Firestorm in this season? Because I just can't. I cannot see and think about Firestorm fitting into this story and this kind of vibe at all. They just feel like they'd be completely out of place, and obviously they're not in the show, and I'm not obviously making a complaint, but what I'm saying is this doesn't feel the same. This doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel the same not having those characters in it, and given the fact that I don't think they would fit into this season anyway, does show that we have a bit of a problem here. The other big problem with Legends this season is how it's choosing joke over story. The reason why Season 3 works so well is it had such a great central narrative in the form of the Legends needing to collect these 6 magical totems in order to stop Malice. Now, this season does not have a compelling main narrative, and I feel that is the biggest killer to this season and the reason why it feels so different. Instead, what this season is deciding to go for is a series of jokes connected via sequences, and I feel like this is the wrong approach to take it. Let me give you a good example. In Legends of Tomorrow Season 3, Episode 14, we had a fantastic episode that was very based in the golden age of piracy, and in that episode, it was really fun, it was very ridiculous, but worked really well because it was so seeded in the main narrative. The reason why we went to the golden age of piracy was to collect the Earth Totem, and while we were there, all the legends got to dress up as pirates. We got loads of pirate stuff because, again, it was very focused in that era but still connected to the main story. This season doesn't have anything like that, and I guess you could say, well, we're very early on in the season at this point, we don't even really know what the overarching story is, but the fact we don't have an idea what the overarching story is yet, I find very, very worrying. And yes, you could also make the comparison to Supernatural, where the show is very much a villain of the week sort of thing, but even Supernatural has an overarching story, and I just can't see that in Legends at the moment, and it's starting to worry me given the fact we are now 6 episodes into this season and I still have no idea really what the story is. Overall, I have to say, while Legends started to get a little bit better for me this season, episodes 4 and 5, this episode took it back down to the position I was in for episodes 2 and 3. I just didn't really enjoy this episode. I think it felt completely pointless to me, and it just fully objectified all the problems I had with this season and why I feel like this season is failing in comparison to Season 3. It's a real shame. I don't want this to happen. I really didn't want this to be the case, but it just keeps going that way, and it's a real shame. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like, it'll help me out a lot, and share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV and get them to join the community. And as always guys, please subscribe for your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow. And with all that said guys, I hope to see you again in my next video.